When I look back now, I still can't pinpoint the exact moment when love began to rot. Was it the day he stopped looking me in the eyes when he spoke? Or was it much earlier, the day I signed those papers, smiling, trusting, believing I was safe in his hands? At first, Daniel was everything a woman could ever hope for. Gentle, attentive, the kind of man who made love feel like home. He used to bring me flowers for no reason, white lilies, because he said they reminded me of the way I smiled in the morning light. He'd set them down on the kitchen table, still glistening with dew, and kiss the back of my neck while I made breakfast. Back then, life was simple. I worked as a preschool teacher, surrounded by laughter and sticky little hands. Daniel ran a small construction business. Our house, my house, sat on the edge of a quiet street lined with mango trees. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. I had bought it after years of saving, working extra hours, and living carefully. That house was my pride. Every tile, every curtain, every picture frame, I had chosen it myself. But when Daniel moved in after our wedding, I felt something shift in the air. Suddenly, the walls seemed warmer, the evenings fuller. We'd sit on the porch at dusk, sipping tea, watching the neighborhood kids play with kites in the fading light. He'd tell me, "Mara, one day we'll fill this place with our own laughter." And I'd smile, believing it, believing him. He was so patient in the beginning. He listened when I talked about my dreams, about wanting to open my own daycare center one day. He'd squeeze my hand and say, "We'll make it happen." It's strange how people can change so gradually that you don't even notice. Not until it's too late. It started with small things. He began keeping his phone face down on the table. He got irritated when I asked about work. He stopped calling me sweetheart and started calling me woman. Still, I told myself he was just tired, that stress makes people different. Then one evening, about a year after we married, he came home with a folder of papers. He said it was about refinancing the mortgage, that it would simplify things. I remember sitting at the dining room table, the ceiling fan humming softly above us, as he explained in that calm, convincing voice of his. "It's just paperwork, Mara. You know how banks are. They prefer dealing with one name. You're always busy with your school. Let me handle it. I'll take care of everything." He said it with such ease, such practiced reassurance that I didn't think twice. I had no reason to. This was my husband, the man who kissed my forehead when I cried, who remembered how I liked my tea. So I signed. I remember my hand trembling slightly, not from fear, just from the weight of trust. The kind of trust that feels like air, invisible, everywhere, impossible to notice until it's gone. After that day, something invisible shifted between us. He still smiled, but it no longer reached his eyes. His laughter turned sharp. He'd come home late, reeking of alcohol and perfume I didn't wear. One night, when I asked him where he'd been, he slammed his glass down so hard the table rattled. "Do I have to answer to you now?" he said. I remember freezing, my heart knocking painfully in my chest. I tried to calm him. "Daniel, I was just worried." "Worried?" he sneered. "You think because you bought this house you can question me?" It was the first time I saw that look, a flash of something dark, almost hateful. I wanted to remind him that we were a team, that I loved him, but the words tangled in my throat. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened. He even made breakfast, eggs and toast, my favorite. He hummed softly while cooking, as though the night before had been a dream. That's how it was for weeks. Tenderness followed by tension. Love followed by silence. I learned to walk carefully, to measure my words, to avoid anything that might spark his anger. One evening, while tidying the study, I came across an envelope tucked inside a drawer, documents with both our names, except mine had been crossed out. My stomach dropped. My hands shook as I read the papers. Property title transfer, registered under Daniel Hayes. I stared at the black ink, my name erased as though I had never existed. That night, I waited for him to come home. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I simply held the paper out to him and asked quietly, "Daniel, what is this?" For a moment, he didn't answer. He just looked at me, long and cold, the way a stranger looks at a stray animal that's wandered too close. Then his mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "It's called security," he said. "You wanted a husband who takes care of things, didn't you?" My heart broke a little right then. Not because of the papers, but because of his tone. I realized in that moment the man standing before me wasn't the one who had once promised to protect me. Still, I didn't know how bad things would get. Not yet. I told myself it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe he'd fix it. Maybe love could still heal whatever was cracking between us. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered the truth, one I wasn't ready to face. I had just handed my life to someone who would soon destroy it. After that night, I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way Daniel would glance at me when I walked into a room. Not lovingly, not curiously, but as if I were an inconvenience. The way his tone shifted when we were around other people. How his charm returned like magic the moment anyone else was there to witness it. At home, he was distant. Outside, he was perfect. It confused me at first. I thought maybe I was overthinking, that maybe I was the one changing. But silence has a sound, you know? It fills every corner of the house when love disappears. And our home, once filled with laughter and clinking teacups, had grown unbearably quiet. Some evenings, I'd sit alone at the dining table with a single plate of food, waiting for him. The wall clock would tick louder with every passing minute. 10 o'clock, 11, sometimes midnight. Then headlights would flash across the window and I'd hear his heavy steps, his keys hitting the table, the faint smell of whiskey trailing behind him. "Dinner's cold," I'd whisper. He'd grunt, not even looking my way. "I didn't ask you to wait." That was the beginning of his cruelty, not in shouting, but in indifference, the kind that eats away at your spirit slowly, silently. One afternoon, I went to the market to buy groceries. At the counter, I tried using my debit card, the same joint account we had always shared. But the cashier frowned. "Ma'am, your card's been declined." I laughed nervously, assuming it was a system error. But when I got home and checked online, the balance read 0.00 rupees. I remember calling out to Daniel. He was sitting in the living room, feet up on the coffee table, scrolling through his phone. "Daniel," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "the bank account's empty. Did you transfer something?" He didn't even glance at me. "It's my account," he said flatly. "I can do what I want." I froze. "Our account, Daniel." He looked up then, his eyes sharp. "My money, my house, my rules, don't forget that." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt thick, like standing in smoke. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words again and again. My house. He said it like a weapon. I started feeling like a guest in my own home. I cleaned, cooked, smiled, anything to keep the peace. But peace doesn't exist where respect has died. One evening, my friend Leela came over. She was my colleague from the preschool, a kind woman with a warm laugh. "Mara," she said, her eyes soft but worried, "you look tired. Is everything okay?" I almost lied. I almost said, "I'm fine." But the truth was sitting so heavy in my chest that I couldn't keep it in anymore. "Leela," I whispered, "do you ever feel like you're living with a stranger?" She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "What's going on?" So I told her about the papers, the account, the changes in him. She was silent for a moment, then said, "You need to be careful, Mara. This isn't just stress. He's isolating you." Her words rattled me. Isolating. Such a cold word, but so accurate. I realized then how many small freedoms I'd lost without noticing. I no longer met my friends without asking him first. I stopped visiting my sister because he didn't like her energy. He had taken over every decision, what I wore, who I saw, even what I cooked. And somehow, I had let him. One evening, when he came home late again, I asked gently, "Daniel, can we talk, please?" He threw his jacket on the couch and sighed. About what now? I feel like we're drifting apart. I don't understand what's happening between us. He smirked, a cruel, mocking thing. "You want to understand? Here's what's happening, Mara. I'm tired of carrying all the weight while you sit around pretending to be some innocent little wife. You should be grateful I even kept you here." I stared at him, stunned. "Grateful?" I repeated softly. "For what?" He snapped, gesturing around the room. "For this, for the roof over your head, for the food you eat, for me putting up with your whining every day." It was like being slapped without his hand ever touching me. That night, I cried quietly in the bathroom, muffling the sound against a towel so he wouldn't hear. The next morning, he acted as though nothing had happened, cheerful, humming while making coffee. He leaned against the counter and said, "We should go to your cousin's wedding next week. People are starting to talk. You don't want them thinking we've got problems, do you?" I looked at him confused. "Why does it matter what they think?" "Because image is everything," he said. "People respect a man who's in control of his wife. Remember that." Something in me broke a little that day. Not loudly, quietly, like glass cracking under a rug. That night, while he slept, I sat by the window and stared at the house I once loved so much. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, the occasional bark of a dog outside, the faint scent of rain drifting through the open pane. It was my home, but it no longer felt like mine. Every wall seemed to echo his voice. Every corner carried his shadow. I thought about packing my bags, just leaving. But where would I go? My savings were gone, my name erased from the property, my dignity chipped away piece by piece. So I stayed, convincing myself that maybe he'd change again, that the kind, gentle man I married still lived somewhere inside him. But deep down, I already knew. Sometimes the man you think will protect you is the one you'll need protection from. The day everything fell apart began like any other. It was a Tuesday. Quiet, ordinary, deceptively peaceful. I made breakfast as usual. The smell of fried eggs and toast filled the air, the kettle whistled, the morning light spilled softly across the floor. I remember thinking, maybe today will be different. Daniel came down the stairs in a crisp shirt, his hair still damp from the shower. For a fleeting second, he looked like the man I'd once fallen in love with. "Morning," I said, offering him a smile. He barely glanced at me. "You didn't iron my blue shirt." "It was in the laundry," I said gently. "I can press it now." "Forget it," he snapped. "You're useless sometimes, you know that?" He said it casually, like one might comment about the weather. I stood there frozen, a plate of eggs growing cold in my hands. It's strange how words can wound deeper than fists. They don't bruise the skin, they bruise the soul. That evening, he came home later than usual. I could smell alcohol the moment he walked in. His tie was loose, his steps uneven. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Daniel, we need to talk." He dropped his keys on the table with a loud clatter. "Not tonight." "It can't wait." He looked at me then, eyes glassy, smile lazy. "Oh, so the little housewife found her courage again." I swallowed hard. My hands were shaking, but I stood my ground. "I went to the land office today. I needed to know why my name was missing from the property file. The clerk said it was transferred 2 months ago, Signed by you. The silence that followed was heavy, so heavy that I could hear the clock ticking in the background. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look surprised. Instead, he smirked. You really should learn to read before signing things. For a moment, my heart stopped. The air around me felt thinner. You planned this? He shrugged. I did what any smart man would do. You think I'd let a woman keep everything in her name while I pay the bills? Please. Tears burned behind my eyes. That's not true. I paid for this house before we even married. He took a slow step toward me. And I'm living in it now, aren't I? There was something in his voice, something sharp and dangerous. Daniel, I trusted you, I whispered. How could you do this to me? That was when his face changed. His eyes hardened and his jaw clenched. He slammed his fist onto the table, making the cups rattle. Don't talk to me about trust. You're nothing without me. You understand that? Nothing. My body went cold. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. You can't treat me like this, I said softly. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Can't I? You signed the papers, didn't you? This is my house now. You just live here because I let you. I stepped back, trembling. Daniel, please. That was when he struck me. The sound, a sharp, sickening crack, still echoes in my memory. My cheek burned, my knees buckled, and for a moment, everything went blurry. He towered over me, breathing hard. I said, don't talk back. I tried to steady myself, gripping the edge of the table. You don't have to do this, I whispered. Please, stop. But my words only seemed to fuel him. He grabbed my arm, shaking me so hard that the bangles around my wrist clinked together. You think this is your house? Not anymore. You hear me? Get out. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the rug. Where will I go? I cried. He sneered. Not my problem. Maybe you should have thought of that before acting like you were better than me. When I didn't move, he grabbed my suitcase, the small one I used when visiting my sister, and threw it on the floor in front of me. Pack your things, he said coldly, now. Tears streamed down my face. Daniel, please, I don't have anywhere. Before I could finish, he threw the door open. Then you'll figure it out, because you're not sleeping under my roof tonight. I remember standing there, trembling, heart pounding, trying to decide if this was really happening. The house, my house, suddenly felt like a stranger's place. The pictures on the walls, the curtains I'd chosen, the scent of home-cooked food, all of it seemed foreign now. When I hesitated, he stepped closer and shoved me, not hard enough to fall, but enough to send a message. Leave, he said again. So I did. I walked out barefoot, clutching my small bag, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. The street was empty. Silent, except for the distant hum of crickets. I stood there, under the flickering street light, staring at the house I had built with my own hands, the house that now belonged to someone who had destroyed me. For a long time, I couldn't move. I just stood there, numb, the world spinning quietly around me. Then something inside me, something small but stubborn, whispered, "You're still alive. Keep walking." So I walked. I went to Leela's house. She opened the door and froze when she saw me, my face bruised, my eyes swollen. Without a word, she pulled me inside and held me. And that was the first time I broke down completely. Through tears, I told her everything. The papers, the lies, the violence. When she finished, she said quietly, "Mara, you have to report him." I shook my head. He'll ruin me. He already did. Now it's time to stop him. Her words sank deep into me, steady and unshakable. And right there, sitting in her small living room, I made a decision. For the first time in months, maybe years, I would not stay silent. The next morning, I woke up on Leela's couch with swollen eyes and a dull ache in my cheek. The sunlight creeping through her curtains felt too bright, almost cruel, the kind of light that exposes everything you want to hide. Lila sat beside me, holding a cup of tea. "Drink this," she said softly. "You need to eat something." My hands trembled as I reached for the cup. "I don't even know where to start," I whispered. She placed a hand on mine. "Start by standing up for yourself. You have to report him, Mara. If not for you, then for the woman who'll come after you." Her words lingered in the air. They scared me, and yet they also lit something small and fierce inside me. After a few moments, I nodded. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll do it." That afternoon, we went to the police station. The walk from the car to the front door felt like miles. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel every beat in my throat. I almost turned back twice, but Lila held my hand tightly. Inside, the station smelled of paper and dust and old sweat. The fan above the front desk turned lazily, clicking every few seconds. A female officer approached. Her badge read Inspector Farah Khan. She looked at me, really looked, and something in her expression softened. "What happened to your face?" she asked gently. I hesitated. My throat felt tight. "My husband," I finally said. "He hit me, and he took my house." Her eyes sharpened. "Sit down. Tell me everything." So I did. Every word, every detail. My voice shook at first, but as the story spilled out, something strange happened. The fear began to fade, replaced by a kind of exhausted strength. When I finished, she said, "You did the right thing coming here. You'll need to file an official report. We'll start an investigation." Hearing those words, "official report," made my stomach twist. "He's well connected," I murmured. "He knows people. I'm scared." Inspector Farah leaned forward. "Mara, no one is above the law. We'll make sure you're protected." That night I stayed at a women's shelter. It was small, but safe. The walls were painted a soft peach color and the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and jasmine. I shared a room with 2 other women, both quiet, both carrying their own invisible wounds. When I lay down on the thin mattress, I realized I had nothing left but my clothes, a few documents, and my dignity. The one thing he hadn't managed to take from me. Days passed slowly. The police called me in for statements. There were forms, signatures, photographs of my bruises, things that made me feel stripped bare, but also seen. For once, someone was listening. Daniel, of course, denied everything. He said I was unstable, that I'd left on my own, that I was making up stories. When the officer read his statement to me, I felt something cold rise in my chest. Not pain this time, but anger. Calm, steady anger. "He can lie all he wants," I said quietly, "but I know the truth, and I'm not afraid anymore." The case moved to court. It took months of hearings, documents, lawyers, and endless waiting. Each time I entered that courtroom, my knees felt weak. Daniel would sit across from me in his neatly pressed suit, smirking as though none of it mattered. But slowly, piece by piece, his mask began to slip. Witnesses came forward, neighbors who heard shouting, a shopkeeper who saw me leave that night bruised and barefoot. Even the clerk from the land office testified, confirming that Daniel had pushed for the property transfer alone. Every testimony felt like a small victory, not just for me, but for the woman I used to be, the one who thought love meant surrender. Still, there were nights when I broke down, when I missed the home I'd built, the garden I'd planted with my own hands. I'd dream of the sound of the wind through those mango trees, and I'd wake up crying. But each morning, I reminded myself I wasn't that woman anymore. One evening after a particularly long court session, Leela and I sat on a bench outside. The air smelled faintly of rain, the sky heavy with clouds. She looked at me and smiled. "You're stronger than you think, you know that, right?" I shook my head. "No, Leela, I'm just tired." "Maybe. But you didn't let him win." I thought about that as we sat in silence, watching the rain begin to fall. Weeks later, the verdict came. The court ruled that Daniel's property transfer was fraudulent, and the house, my house, was legally returned to me. But the most powerful moment wasn't hearing the judgment. It was watching his expression as the words were read aloud. The arrogance in his eyes finally faltered. His jaw clenched. His hands shook slightly. He didn't look powerful anymore. He just looked small. When we stepped out of the courthouse, I felt the wind brush my face, cool and clean, like a blessing. For the first time in a long time, I breathed deeply without feeling afraid. Justice, I realized, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives quietly, with dignity. That night, I went back to the shelter one last time. I thanked the women who'd shared their stories with me, stories of loss, survival, and resilience. And as I packed my few belongings, I felt the calm I hadn't felt in years. I was leaving with almost nothing, yet somehow I felt whole. Months passed after the court's verdict. On paper, I had won. The house was legally mine again, my name restored. But inside, I was still rebuilding something far more fragile than property. I was rebuilding myself. I didn't move back into the house right away. The thought of walking through those doors again made my chest tighten. Every wall, every floorboard held memories. Laughter that turned into shouting, gentle hands that became fists. Instead, I stayed with Leela for a while longer. I started working part-time at a small community center for women, the same one that had helped me after I left him. I helped organize support groups, answered phones, listened to stories that sounded painfully familiar. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest. Healing, even. Then one morning I opened the newspaper, and there he was, Daniel. His name splashed across the local business section. Real estate agent faces suspension for fraud allegations. I stared at the photo. He looked thinner, tired. His confident smile was gone. The article said multiple clients had come forward claiming he'd mishandled funds and forged documents. Some even mentioned his past domestic abuse case. Mine. I felt nothing at first, just silence. Then slowly, a wave of understanding. Karma didn't need me to chase it. It had its own timing. Over the next few weeks, more came out. His business collapsed, his partners withdrew, his second wife, the woman he'd left me for, filed for separation. Word spread quietly through the community, and the same people who once envied him began to whisper behind his back. One afternoon, I saw him. It was at the market, the same place where we used to shop every Sunday. He was standing near the vegetable stall, wearing worn-out clothes, his hair unkempt. For a moment, he didn't notice me. Then he looked up and froze. Our eyes met. I thought I'd feel anger, or maybe satisfaction, but all I felt was an odd, quiet pity. He tried to smile, awkwardly. "Mara, I didn't expect to see you." I nodded. "Life's full of surprises." He looked down, fidgeting with his hands. He said, "I've been meaning to call you, to apologize." I stayed silent. He said, "I lost everything. The house, the business, even..." He stopped mid-sentence, as if realizing the irony. I looked at him for a long moment. Then quietly, I said, "You didn't lose everything, Daniel. You threw it away." His face fell. He opened his mouth to say something, but I had already turned to leave. As I walked away, I felt the sun on my skin, warm, steady, real. For years, I'd lived under the shadow of his control. Now, that shadow was gone. That evening, I visited the house. My house. The locks had been changed, the walls repainted. I stood outside for a long time before opening the door. Inside, it smelled different, faintly of fresh paint and new beginnings. The living room looked smaller than I remembered. The corners that once echoed with fear now held a kind of peace. I walked through each room slowly, running my fingers along the walls, feeling both the weight of the past and the promise of the future. In the garden, the mango trees had grown taller. The sunlight filtered through their leaves, casting soft shadows on the grass. I sat on the old stone bench Daniel and I once placed there together. For a long time, I just listened to the wind, the birds, the stillness. And then I smiled. Not because I'd won against him, but because I'd won myself back. In the months that followed, I started over completely. I renovated the house, made it brighter, warmer. I planted new flowers, jasmine and marigold, my favorites. And every morning I'd open the windows wide, letting the sunlight pour in, reminding myself that I'd survived what was meant to break me. I no longer avoided mirrors. I no longer apologized for taking up space. Sometimes women from the center would come over for tea. We'd sit in the garden, sharing stories and laughter that came from places of pain, yet sounded like hope. And so often I'd glance at the front gate, the one I once walked out of in fear, and feel a quiet pride, knowing that I'd walked back in on my own terms. I know people expect a story like mine to end with revenge, with some grand act of payback or vengeance. But real life doesn't always work like that. Sometimes justice is simply peace. And healing, it's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's just a slow, gentle return to yourself. As I sit here now, watching the sunset from my porch, I think of all the women who might be where I once was, scared, uncertain, trapped between love and fear. And I want to tell them this: you are stronger than the pain that tries to silence you. You are more than what was taken from you. And one day, you'll stand in the sunlight again, not as someone's victim, but as your own survivor. I look at the sky, soft hues of orange and gold fading into twilight, and I whisper the question that has lingered in my heart ever since that night. Would you have forgiven him or walked away like I did? It's been 3 years since the day I walked back into my home. Sometimes when I sit by the window with a cup of tea, I can still hear echoes of the woman I used to be, her quiet laughter, her trembling voice, her endless attempts to hold a crumbling marriage together. I want to reach out to her, to tell her she didn't fail. She simply trusted the wrong heart for too long. The house feels different now, lighter, kinder. I painted the walls a warm cream and filled the rooms with the scent of sandalwood candles. The photos that once showed only Daniel and me are gone, replaced with moments of peace, the women from the center, my small garden, sunsets I captured when I finally learned to look forward again. There's a new rhythm to my days. I wake up early, open the windows, and let the morning air wash through the house. I volunteer full-time now at the center. Some days I help women find jobs, other days I just listen. One woman, Roxana, once said to me, "You don't talk like someone who's been through pain." I smiled. That's because I survived it. Healing didn't happen all at once. It came in moments, small, tender ones. The first time I slept through the night without nightmares, the first time I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who wasn't afraid, the first time I laughed, really laughed, without feeling guilty for it. Every step felt like a victory. A few months ago, I got a letter. It was from Daniel. I recognized his handwriting immediately, sharp, hurried, the same as when he used to leave notes on the fridge. For a long while, I didn't open it. It sat on my desk for days, gathering dust. Part of me was curious. The other part, the stronger one, wanted no trace of him left in my life. But one rainy evening, I finally did. Inside, there were only a few lines. Mara, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say that you were right. I destroyed everything because I couldn't stand seeing you stronger than me. I live alone now. I think about you every day. Daniel. I read it twice, then folded it back into the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. All I felt was calm, because for the first time, his words didn't have power over me. I placed the letter in a small wooden box, the same one that now holds fragments of my past, my old house keys, the broken pendant he once gave me, and a single dried jasmine flower from the garden we once planted together. That box is my reminder, not of pain, but of growth. One Sunday morning, I invited the women from the center over for lunch. We cooked together, laughter filling the kitchen like music. Ruxana brought biryani, Sana made kheer, and I brewed my favorite ginger tea. We sat in the garden, under the shade of the mango trees, and shared stories of survival. At one point, Sana turned to me and said, "You should tell your story publicly. You could help so many women." I looked around at the sunlight filtering through the leaves, at the faces of women who'd walked through fire and come out shining, and I realized she was right. So that night, I began writing it down. Every word, every memory. Not to relive it, but to release it. And now as I shared this story with you, I know why I had to go through it. Not because I deserved the pain, but because I was meant to find my voice through it. You see, I once thought love meant staying, holding on no matter what. But now I know, sometimes love means leaving. Leaving when it hurts, leaving when you're afraid, leaving because your peace matters more than someone else's comfort. And walking away doesn't make you weak. It makes you free. If you're listening to this and you've ever found yourself in a place where love turned into control or where kindness turned into fear, please remember, you are not the problem. You are not the burden. And you are not alone. There is life after betrayal. There is beauty after pain. And there is power in starting over, no matter how late it feels. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I light a candle by the window and watch the city lights flicker in the distance. I don't think of Daniel anymore. I think of me, the woman who once trembled in fear, now sitting in peace. My house stands strong, just like me. Every wall holds a story, not of destruction, but of rebirth. And as I close this chapter, I want to leave you with this thought. When someone tries to take everything from you, remember they can never take who you are. Because what's yours, your strength, your truth, your spirit, will always find its way back home. So tell me, dear listener, would you have forgiven him or walked away like I did? If my story touched your heart, don't forget to share it. Somewhere out there, another woman might need to hear that she's not alone.